It's 11:02. I know we have a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our webinar. Our theme for today is realigning the message, connecting with government priorities in 2026 and beyond. I'm Katie Hanasick. Um, I am the EVP and PR practice lead at REQ. Very nice of all of you to join us. I guess it's still morning for many of us. And I'm delighted to introduce you to our fantastic panel. And I'm going to introduce them quickly before we dive in. So, first of all, we have Emily Burdishaw, who's our former public affairs for the Navy. She worked at Tech and Gov Accelerator at Decode with startups, and most recently as director of marketing at Axonius Federal. So, she's going to bring a breadth of experience to this conversation. Next, we have Lauren Franco, Director of U.S. Public Sector Field Marketing at Nutanix. And finally, Heather Kuldell-Ware. She is a communications consultant at REQ. We are delighted to have her as part of our team and former editor-in-chief at GovExec. So an incredible font of knowledge on all things related to media and messaging. So welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us today. And so let's dive in. As federal priorities evolve, we're noticing that modernization, themes like efficiency, still remain critical. But now we're also seeing some broader goals like defense readiness and mission assurance. So, and during this discussion, we're going to explore how marketers and communicators are realigning their message to reflect these shifting priorities while still maintaining the goal of credibility, authenticity, and most importantly, remaining differentiated. So, with that in mind, Lauren, I'm going to start with you. Nutanix has emphasized modernization and efficiency, especially lately with Doge. How are you reframing these themes to align with priorities across government rather than presenting them as business as usual?
That's a great question because we really started to hear from our sellers, right? Like, what was our strategy going to be when Doge became the word of the day, right? But modernization for us has never been just about cost cutting, right? It's always been about helping agencies deliver on their mission. And that was the case even before Doge, right? So, we kind of go back to what we've always offered, right? A secure cloud smart solution. And where we are evolving is with some increased messaging around flexibility, right? Like, we want our prospects and customers to understand that they have choice, right? We want decision makers to understand that they have the ability to reduce technical debt. They can bring in AI ready infrastructure, right? And that suddenly modernization becomes a driver for them. It's a tool instead of a goal. That gets them better citizen services, that gets them to operational agility, right? And I think that that's a very forward-looking vision, and it's certainly not business as usual for us.
Fantastic. Emily, what about you? While you were at Axonius, was modernization a key theme from you? And how did you see your message migrating or shifting over time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think specifically at Axonius, modernization itself wasn't as much of a focus as it was what we could help our customers achieve. So we were sort of a net new capability coming in that made a huge impact in a tech stack, our customers' tech stack. Our customers were more interested in that impact and how we could kind of quantify what we could do for them rather than just kind of this overarching modernization theme. I think broader than Axonius, though, too, there has been that larger shift to, okay, so what? Like we're talking about modernization. What does that actually mean? What am I going to get from it? How's it going to help me keep my job? How's it going to make me look good in front of my boss? Like some of those questions.
Mhm. Heather, you and I have both seen companies talking about digital modernization for years. What do you see things shifting or new words being introduced?
Well, I think it's less about the words and more about getting specific because digital modernization was always vague. And a lot of us fall into the trap of, okay, you help with digital modernization. As when I was wearing my journalist hat, I was like, okay, what does that mean? And you probably should start with what that means instead of a catch-all term like digital modernization, especially in an agency that's looking for efficiencies and accountability. Like, just skip the vagueness. What do you do? Where do you fit?
Right. So I'm glad you brought up efficiency because certainly earlier this year, we were seeing all of our clients want to align their message with the theme of efficiency. Do you think that's still a primary message? Emily, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I do. But I think, bigger than that, I think context is really important. Like, what does efficiency mean for your customer specifically? For us, it was showing them how much quicker they could respond to threats. It was showing them gaps that they had in their infrastructure so that they could remediate those more quickly. It was a lot of time savings, workforce rote task elimination through automation. Um, and I think there's so much of a desire to understand impact that I have heard this in many conversations recently of just like scrap the first 5 slides in your corporate pitch deck. I don't care who invested in you. I don't care when you were founded. Like, how can you help me? Help me understand exactly what you do and the impact it's going to have to my world. And so I think if you come at efficiency from that lens, it can be very productive. But if you just come at it from a more general place, it's probably not going to be as helpful.
That's great feedback. Lauren, how about you?
Yeah, I'm laughing because we met for coffee, and one of the things that we kind of were joking about, but I think is so true, it's like use real words, right? Like
Yeah.
we all we all are starting to, I think, get into the trap of saying like we bring efficiency or we can help you reach efficiency, right? But truly, like what does that mean? And at Nutanix, efficiency has never not been a primary message for us. So when I think about how we do talk about that, right? It's because government is, facing this IT complexity at kind of an all-time high, right? Like we all know the different um, threats, right? Security threats, there's threats to their costs, there's increasing complexity around their tech stack and infrastructures that they can choose. And then you put this against the backdrop of a skills shortage, right? I mean, it almost feels like we're, I don't know, fooling ourselves to say like, oh, let's talk about efficiency, right? You have all these challenges and we want to come in here and throw this efficiency word at you. But I do think that there's an opportunity and it makes sense for vendors to really kind of align their positioning, their messaging as a solution to some of that operational consistency, right? And so maybe it's a little bit less about efficiency and a little bit more about simplicity.
Hmm, excellent. Heather, did you want to chime in?
I do want to chime in. I wanted to feel included. Um, I think when we talk about efficiency, it makes sense if that is true to your brand, right? Some people do different missions, right? But efficiency can be, I think again, this is like respecting people's time. When you're talking about efficiency, are you talking about workforce hours saved? Are you talking about a citizen experience that has been drastically improved and you can show it? Are you doing cost savings? Are you doing cost avoidance? There's a lot of different ways you can do your messaging. It's not about just saying the word efficiency. It's about proving that you are efficient, right? Make the argument, do your college essay. How are you actually efficient? Do a little bit of exploring that way, and you won't look like you're just jumping on a bandwagon, right? Like, hey, I heard I need to be efficient. This is how we're efficient. Have an
Hmm.
argument.
Fantastic. And Heather, I want to build on that a little bit. So, as someone who has been on the front lines of multiple administrations and their technical priorities, how would you sum up what you believe are this administration's top priorities, and what would you recommend for companies that want to demonstrate that at least they're paying attention to those priorities while still keeping their brand and core messaging in mind?
Tricky question. I had to muse on this a little bit, right? But honestly, I think some of the Administration's policies have actually been very clearly stated up front. I know, weird take. The news cycle makes it crazy. Don't confuse the news cycle with the priorities. Efficiency, which I would actually partner with accountability. When am I going to see the return on my investment? Um, for defense space, where I see a lot more talk about lethality, which isn't something that has very frequently been talked about in like an IT space, obviously in the DoD space, but not the IT space. There
Hmm.
might be arguments that you are talking about lethality now. But again, I don't want to get someone caught up on buzzwords. One of the most important things I want people to think about that I think some very smart people have caught on to, but maybe not everyone has, is this is an administration that thinks government needs to work better. Not a controversial take there, but they're bringing in a lot of people who have never worked in government before. So if you are relying on your previous reputation and assume that you are a known quantity, you very well may be wrong. And this is especially true with the number of people who have left government for whatever reason they've left government, right? So if you think heads down, they'll figure it out, they know who I am, I would really question that strategy because I
Hmm.
would say usually when an administration comes in, we see familiar faces. Oh, they led entered this agency before. Oh, they came back from this administration. That's much less the case now. So I want everyone to really think about that when they're thinking about their messaging. Am I actually a known quantity?
And
Yeah.
do I know my audience? I would add that too. Like, do you know your audience now that there has been this level of changeover? Do you know what's important to them and how they're moving differently? Are their fears the same as their predecessors? Those are all valuable questions.
And
Yeah.
I
Go ahead, Lauren.
I was just going to say that, I just read a study, right, that familiarity is down, right? So even among some of the mid-sized companies, this change, your household name, right, is maybe not the same as it once was because there are new players. And so think about, some of the top of funnel messaging, right? Maybe you've moved down funnel, right? But it's not a bad idea to revisit some of that brand awareness, brand building motions during this transition.
Hmm. So, Lauren, I'm going to circle back to you. Building on what Heather was saying about lethality and some of the DoD specific messaging, the concept of digital sovereignty, national resilience, defense readiness, right, is taking hold in many government agencies, especially the ones in the DoD or now the DoW, depending on your personal guidelines. Which reflects a desire for more control over data, less reliance on foreign providers. Is that a message that you are incorporating into your messaging? And how do you do that without alienating certain agencies that may be managing hybrid or multi-cloud environments? And you can talk about, you mentioned a little earlier about the flexibility of your options, but also thinking about how you've embraced that DoD specific messaging.
Absolutely. And I think you kind of mentioned it around the word control, right? I mean, digital sovereignty is a big priority, at least for us, because we see it as a way to empower agencies rather than limit them, right? So our message does focus, or at least we try to talk about how we want them in control of where their data lives, right? We want them in control of how it's managed, right? And that can look a lot of different ways for DoD versus civilian versus even our SLED market, right? So whether they're choosing on-prem or a private cloud or multiple clouds, we really do focus messaging on their ability to control that, right? We emphasize flexibility. We want them to meet those sovereignty requirements. And I think that that's really important when you're talking about, you know, the benefit, right? We don't want them sacrificing the benefits of having that choice and that control, right? I mean, the ultimate goal is that they need to be able to build and maintain resilient IT ecosystems, right? And that's what we're here to help them do. So we are kind of constantly evolving our messaging around this. We are trying to highlight how we help our customers do that. I think that's kind of what Heather was starting to say, right? Like not just that we can do it, but really create specific examples of how and where and who we're doing that for. So, as an example, right, like we've kind of rolled out our first phase of our digital sovereignty messaging, but now, like this month, we have a new ebook coming out that can talk to, the different pillars of becoming of having digital sovereignty, right? We have a blog that really kind of gets specific, but it helps us stay current and stay in the mix, right? Not just a section of our webpage dedicated to it. And lastly, I think that the underlying piece of digital sovereignty is really around building trust with your customers, right? So we do that through education. I think that consistent education around how our tools can help you reach digital sovereignty um, is important, but also the relationship piece of it, right? So having an ongoing relationship with our CIOs who at a moment's notice need to know that like our infrastructure is going to have them audit ready. So the relationship piece of it is also really important.
And you're finding that even with this administration, that audit readiness message is working?
Absolutely. Yes.
Emily, how about you? I'm curious to hear how Axonius and some of your previous experience um, has shaped your thinking about messaging and whether defense readiness, sort of beyond compliance, is has shaped your thinking about messaging specifically for the DoD, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think compliance is always something that sweetens the deal, but so many of the customers are so mission focused that's 100% the lens that they're coming with. Maybe they do have some compliance things they definitely have to care about, but they are more concerned about how to protect this country from bad actors, right? Like, especially when we're thinking about DoD and the intelligence community.
Mhm.
Um, so I would build on what Lauren was just talking about. Like, show me what it looks like. She referenced all these great content examples that give you really specific use cases and kind of help set you up and understand where you need to start, where you need to go. I would say from Axonius's perspective, it's like how much faster and easier does your tool make threat response? How do you know for certain what holes and gaps you've got between your point solutions within your infrastructure, right? Axonius is in the cybersecurity space, so we're thinking and talking about the cyber attack surface with this shift in the workforce that's going to leave quite a few gaps, potentially on the identity side too. Um, so I think it's important to really recalibrate and say, okay, how much easier is it for me to understand the current threat vectors in a way that allows me to then take action?
Mhm.
Because it's that action piece that's the most important. Okay, great. I've got all this information. Now I need to do something with it and fulfill that mission which brought us here.
And just a follow-on question for you, Emily, because
Yeah.
I know Axonius compliance is a key message for you all. Is
Yeah.
that something that is important to your sellers? Like, do they lead with that, or do they focus more on the mission and some of these new themes, since some of the compliance things are older?
Yeah, honestly, the focus is more on the mission. And when we work into that response that we can help them fulfill, BOD 853 or whatever, or we can easily address CMMC, that sweetens the pot. And it definitely piques their interest, kind of helps land that hook. We have to come in with bigger than that at first.
It's
Lauren?
it's really easy to want to lead with that, right? It can feel like a slam dunk as like we've checked a box for you. We've checked a big box for
Right.
you, but
We
you're
mapped everything one to one, Like, yeah.
right. Yes, exactly. And so yeah, just don't fall into that you know, trap that leading with that is gonna be the slam dunk that you think it is.
Mhm. Yeah, that's kind of disappointing for all of those vendors who spend so much time trying to do that mapping. Um, okay, this is a question for the group. how can companies balance that desire to align with these compliance mandates and priorities that are coming out of the administration and executive orders while making sure that they stay true to the capabilities of their brand and their core identity and the value that they bring to government? And Heather, I'll start with you.
Tricky. I kind of wanted to piggyback off what both the ladies were saying about mission. In my many years in government, I have, with all the events I've gone to, I've never heard CIOs do want you to help solve their problems, but if you don't understand their mission, they shut down, right? Like that is so important. You need to show that you understand what their end goal is because the problems may change over time, right? Like, it used to be get to the cloud. Now we are seeing a much more mature government who is like, well, I've tried cloud and now I need to really retune my infrastructure this way. Or now technology has evolved and I'm looking to go this way, right? The problems will change over time, but the mission never really does. And I don't know that that answered your question. But I do think that's super important. Like CIOs just shut down. Now, if you have added value, great. I also help you do this. But if you don't lead with the mission, I think you don't get to that compliance conversation.
Lauren.
I think it's a balance. I kind of think of it in three different areas. I think that companies should be looking at mapping the priorities of an administration to their strengths. So, for example, right, like where do federal initiatives of a particular administration intersect with your company's value prop, right? Like hopefully your value prop isn't what's changing and that can remain consistent. So, you can evolve with different initiatives. So I think that that's a good first exercise. I think we've talked about this, right? And Heather, this goes back to like the whole idea of leading with a mission outcome and not using buzzwords, right? I mean, we do, but like not letting that be all you use, right? We are trying to show up as authentic, right? And we're not just chasing like the next policy term. And I think that companies can do this when they talk about their capabilities as outcomes, right? Like that's the whole idea of understanding the mission, right? So, is it resiliency? Is it compliance or citizen experience? And then lastly, and probably what I would say is my most, I don't know, top of mind, or I think maybe the most important one is building partnerships and thought leadership, right? Particularly now, like this is going to be an opportunity for vendors to share how their long-term vision can support evolving mandates, right? Like it is dynamic and we are seeing, these change from day to day and month to month and administration to administration. But the relationships that you can develop will help you reinforce that credibility and consistency.
Yeah, and I think I would add to that in that your brand messaging should be broad enough and your value props should be solid enough that this current environment shouldn't really change that, right? Maybe the story that you tell to help people understand the impact you can have shifts to align with like what is very top of mind for your audience. But I think, Lauren made a good point. It's the same message, maybe a new story. Um, and I think leaning in where you are the strongest, understanding where the admin is putting pressure on your customers, and then where you are most able to help them, and just really hammering that home. I think
Mhm.
it's all about how do you reduce friction? How do you make people's lives a little bit easier, whether that's your buyer or your end user or whoever might be in the mix?
And I don't think you have to try to be all things to
Don't
everyone, right? In
don't be
fact,
all things.
yeah, right. So being very clear about where you said it, where your strengths are, and making sure that that's what you become absolutely known for and clear in someone's mind, right? We joked about this recently when we got together that sometimes you go to a networking event and you ask someone like where they work, right? And then it's like, okay, well, tell me what they do. And then you get like the sales pitch and you're like, No, just like actually tell me what you do. And we're all trying to put people into like a different bucket. And that's also probably what the people that we're selling to are trying to do, right? They're trying to figure out where do you fit, right? Like not just like what you can solve for me, but like how do I place you in my mind and in my tech stack and in throughout my organization? So just that concise, clear um, message is absolutely kind of what I see as like carrying you through, even when initiatives and priorities from administrations are changing.
If you don't have an, I do think the elevator pitch is so important. Even if it's just something that kind of centers you and centers your project, can I explain myself in that 30-second elevator ride is still really important.
So I think we've got a few questions from the audience. Samantha, do you mind jumping in?
Yes, of course. So we have two around AI that I'm going to roll together in one as a two-parter. So, how do you think about the impact of America's AI action plan, and which sectors do you believe are the most pro AI?
I'm happy to maybe kick us off with the most pro AI answer. And this is just what I'm seeing. I think some of our largest organizations are really looking at it in a way that can benefit um, you know, the many, right? So as an example, we might work with one um, department that is testing AI solution, but their intention then is to expand that like across all of their bureaus. And so I think that there's kind of this like willingness to start small, but with the intention of scaling and scaling rapidly. So I think that, again, I'm seeing our adoption at a smaller scale, but with the expected impact to be large. So larger, mostly civilian agencies that are kind of how we're seeing it show up.
And we are about to move into the AI section of this discussion very shortly. But does anyone else want to chime in, try to answer this person's question?
I would also say civilian is where we have seen it crop up. I will briefly mention that there are AI specific buckets of funding that came out early in the administration, early in this term, that allowed people to, do some exciting pilots with the US government. I've not necessarily seen that funding continue at the same pace, but yeah, there was some funding there available previously.
I
Sam,
don't, oh, so
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Heather.
I
No,
was going to
you.
say, I feel like I hear about a lot of AI pilots, lots of places, right? So across SLED, civilian, military, intel, right? Because we put pressure. We got to see what it work. Does it work? And I think now agency leaders are assessing, well, was all that worth it? And we're very much at that was all that worth it question.
So let's move into a section where we talk a little bit more about AI because under this administration, there's been a lot of AI activity. The government has promoted AI innovation through deregulation. They've invested in AI infrastructure, asserted, at the very least, global AI leadership. We saw all the activity around OneGov, where the government leveraged its purchasing power to provide affordable access to a variety of AI tools. And certainly from the REQ perspective, we're seeing almost every single one of our clients double down on their AI messaging. Having said that, what I think is really interesting is that we're at this point where we're seeing the AI hype messaging and also the anti hype. Meaning, and when I say anti hype, I'm talking about articles where they're looking for more meat, like and I'm seeing so many reporter inquiries about this ROI, transparency, questioning whether AI is actually in production or just in pilots. So, Lauren and Emily, Lauren, you could start. I'm curious to hear how your AI messaging has evolved and how you're balancing the tone to reflect both the excitement around what is possible with the brass tacks of implementation and ROI.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Heather kind of just started to touch on this with the idea of like we're kind of in an evaluation stage. There's no question that AI is generating a lot of buzz, right? It's only natural that we're kind of all gravitating to it. But I do think that agencies are starting to ask, like, is it delivering real value? We see two big concerns around ROI and transparency. So we are making sure that our messaging speaks to both of those things. You know, I would say that many companies are what I would call AI adjacent as to actually having an AI offering. We are proud that we have an AI product, right? So we can feel confident about going out and talking about that. We try to ensure that our messaging is clear that this is a tool for their mission outcomes and it's not just a headline. I feel like, we could have a AI toothbrush, right? But it's not just about adding AI in front of everything. It really does go back to kind of the start of this whole conversation today, right? Like, how do we align to mission outcomes? And not just that, like, we are doing things that are powered by AI, but that the AI technology is going to allow them to power their own outcomes.
Mhm. Emily.
I was going to say, I think the hype was real, but behind the scenes, we were getting so many questions and so much hesitancy that we didn't shift to make this giant pivot towards AI messaging that quickly. Um, I also think that what people are, well, two things. One, a lot of companies are saying that they have AI or that they're AI forward, so much so that there's now confusion in the market. What does that actually mean? Like, okay, you have AI in your tool, but what does that look like? Um, and I think that kind of leads to the second point of people are behind the scenes, we're more interested in what the capability would give them. Like, is AI a vehicle to automate certain tasks that are totally burning out my skeleton crew that I've got around? And I think that to Lauren's point, and I've heard Heather say this earlier in the conversation too, it's just a tool to get where you need to go. And people are really focused on where they need to go. I will also say from a cyber standpoint, we heard people talk about it as a new threat vector. This is a new attack surface we have to consider. How do we secure it? How do we ensure that people are educated enough that they can secure it and understand and anticipate, what that next wave might look like?
Interesting. And Heather, with your media hat on, I'm curious what you are seeing in terms of the hype, anti-hype phase.
I mean, I would say the media is definitely in the anti-hype phase. Like even though we all play a role in getting the hype up, we also play a role in getting the hype down. When you see every vendor out there tack on AI, it has lost all meaning. So I know with my media hat on, you got to be ready to answer the harder questions. Some people would call it the dumb questions. At the beginning of the hype cycle, it's all about the potential, right? This could do that, right? We're going to ignore some security concerns right now. We're going to just briefly touch on security concerns right now because of that potential. Well, guess what? You're going to get the questions about where does the data go? How do you know no one is messing with it? Is it in the US? It doesn't really do something. Was there a tool that was cheaper that could have done the same thing? What does it actually do? Like the harder questions, you're going to get hit. So your experts and everyone better be ready to answer those because all tech goes through this cycle. And it's not even just a tech thing, right? There's the new shiny object with a lot of potential. And now we're going to say, cool, we've seen it long enough that we want to know what the results are.
Okay, fantastic. So, building on that, with that context in mind,
Mhm.
Emily, I know you said that you felt like your clients, that your customers were more cautious. So, did you see that same proof is in the pudding kinds of questions, or were they just not ready for an AI conversation at all?
I think, especially when I was in the field with the team, the folks who were excited about AI and would come and ask questions were not, they were riding the excitement of the hype, right? They wanted to build that excitement. They wanted to learn more. They wanted to get out there. They weren't our government buyers. So our government buyers, to back to Heather's point, it's like, okay, well, now what, right? This, you said you can do this thing, but I want to see it in action. Show me. Like you've told me now show me.
Mhm.
And I think if the implementation process is too painful, or if the process to get running with a new tool is too long, you shoot yourself in the foot. Right? If you're coming in with a story about how this is going to make your life easier and then it's not immediately easier, you run the risk of kind of, yeah, putting yourself at a disadvantage.
And I think too that that really speaks to the buyer's journey, right? Like any other tool or product or service that you're trying to market to them, right? Like our customers are excited. That's what I'm seeing. But I think that there's actually a real opportunity here because, at least in my career, government has always kind of been behind enterprise with regards to adoption, right? Like that's who we used to look to. However, I think AI is now an opportunity for government to kind of close that gap. So, as far as like moving them through this journey, like we're still very much in an education phase of how we talk about AI. We do now start to have some use cases, right? But like it goes back to building trust, just as we would with any other tool that we're going out to market with, right? Like if AI is the thing right now, then yeah, let's talk about it. Let's demonstrate how, our product helps them, but it really shouldn't be different than how we approach any other, line of offering with regard to like traditional marketing tactics.
I love how many people come at me and say, AI is not a magic wand. People will say, AI is not a magic wand. AI is not a magic wand. Well, if you presented yourself as AI was your magic wand, you're going to have a disappointed customer unless you actually have that magic wand. Like just pause a moment and think about where we are.
I would like a magic wand, though. That
Yeah.
sounds
I
great.
mean,
Same.
everyone would.
Yeah.
We do have a few other questions that I think are relevant based on the current topics. How do you balance messaging around modernization and efficiency when speaking to audiences who are fatigued by those terms?
Use other words.
Yeah. Real
There's
world. Yeah. I was gonna say
so
like
many ways to say the same thing. Yeah.
simple.
Lauren talked about it earlier. Plain language. You don't have to
Yeah.
use the buzzwords. You should know what everyone else is saying, but you should know what everyone else is saying so you can be different and authentic to your brand, honestly, right? Like, just because someone says it does not mean it's a good idea for you to say it. This is a very human example. Anyone who has kids or teenagers know that they have their own language and their own slang, and it is mysterious. Look at their face if you try to use those words back at them. You're probably going to get an eye roll and like, oh my God, mom, promise to never do that again. Have you fallen into that trap where you have said a sentence that actually said nothing but had all the right buzzwords?
I think it also comes back to show me, won't tell me. Okay, you said the words, proof's in the pudding.
Awesome. Well, I have one other that we can cover now. For companies that aren't directly in the defense or cybersecurity spaces, how can they credibly tie their offerings to national resilience or mission assurance without an overreach?
That feels very dependent on what sector you are in, honestly. Not to give a cop-out answer. I will continue to noodle, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what that would be my follow-up question as well. But it could probably go back to your core strengths, right? Like just an exercise in mapping, those attributes to initiatives. I mean, you don't want to pretend to be something you're not, right? And we've talked about this, like being true to who you are and being strong on that will say a lot more about you than trying to fake it. So yeah, without really knowing the sector, it'd be hard for me to really go further.
Right. I think
And
people,
I,
some vendors are really trying to follow the money and knowing that there is
yeah,
more investment that's from this administration that's going into the Defense Department and ICE and DHS. Some companies are looking at that and thinking, how can I change my messaging so that I can line with the priorities of those particular agencies? And to your point, Lauren, sometimes it's just not a good idea, and you should focus on the capabilities that you do have and not try to be all things to all people.
yeah.
Or I would also add through partnerships, right? Like, is there an opportunity for you to, partner as a subcontractor on something, right? Or, do you have a relationship with the system integrators? I think that that's going to continue to be an area that needs to be addressed, right? Like they're the ones that are going to be winning a lot of big contracts coming up. So how do you help them be be successful, right? And I think that there could be an opportunity for people there.
It's a great
And I
point.
think focus is important. You can't, just like you can't be everything to everybody, you also can't boil the ocean. So if you're trying to figure out where to get going, I think it comes back to that aligning to your strengths, but then it also makes sure you're focusing where there's opportunity and likelihood that you'll be successful.
All right. Well, I'm going to change topics a little bit, but I think it perfectly aligns with everything that you all were saying about show me, don't tell me, and creating those proof points. So, Lauren, starting with you, I'm curious, what things are you doing to build credibility with your customers? So what do you do to show them, not tell them?
Yeah, I mean, first we're treating them like real people. We I've talked about it, but the reputation and trust and relationship is so important to us. And we're looking at different, excuse me, marketing tactics that actually allow us to share how we walk the walk, so to speak, right? So go out. I would challenge anyone, go out and look at a lot of the web pages or downloadable content that other vendors are putting out there. And I think what you'll find is they're telling you like the what and the how, but they're falling short on like the where and the who. And so that is something that's really important for kind of how I'm guiding my team, right? I think telling a story can be extremely challenging across the public sector, right? We can't always go like full detail, but government agencies want to see where your work exists. They want to see that you are doing what you say you can do. And that sounds simple, but we've talked about this. Like vendor familiarity and favorability are both down. And one of the things that we're working on is name recognition and positive association. That there's a lot of transition and change. And so, it's really important that we're investing in tactics that help us with that name recognition and help to grow that positive association. I'd say that some of our top of funnel brand strategies, right? Like are where we're investing in heavily. However, on the other side of that coin, we're also testing more ABM tactics, right? That allows us to share more openly about that work that we're doing across different branches of military, across different bureaus, right? And ABM can also be kind of a buzzword or can feel like a lot to take on. But I think that there's real value in investing and doing the type of work in kind of the one-to-one or one-to-few. And is an area that I would recommend, trying to build out as you establish credibility. One example that we recently launched is a private landing page that is for a specific customer, right? And it allows us to talk about and highlight, very detailed examples of our work kind of already within that agency. So, we're almost talking to them in a digital format in a way that we might show up in person, in a way that we might present to them in a briefing, right? And so I think that if you can, try to isolate either through speaking engagements or, like smaller format settings, ways that you are doing the work and not just talking about how you can, like, right, the whole possibility of it, is going to really elevate how you are being, perceived and how memorable you become to someone because then you're not just a product, you're a partner in their community, right? Everyone wants to know that you you've got someone that they recognize and they can relate to. And so I think that, those are just some of the few areas that we're really taking a look at.
I love that.
And I would love to just double tap on that. I think sometimes people get scared when they hear ABM because they think they've got to invest in this whole
Yep.
large effort. There are so many creative ways that you can make that messaging more specific. Those landing pages Lauren mentioned are a great example. One thing we were working on at Exonius was this plug and play collateral, right? So it's our standard company collateral, but we met with each of our sellers in the field and gathered use cases from them so that they could swap within the same collateral, swap in and out what's going to resonate with the person that they're talking to that day. So there are ways that you can be creative with reusing what you have while still scaling towards what the specificity that you need to be giving your people right now. It's important to our audience.
Emily, is there anything else that you want to add in terms of strategies that you've seen to be effective related to credibility?
Mm, consistency. I think consistency builds trust. And then again, it comes down to can you do what you're going to say you do? Eventually, your reputation as you build that customer base is going to speak louder than any kind of public marketing that you can do, right?
Right.
Um, and I think one sort of behind the scenes tactic that maybe I couldn't leverage as much from a marketing standpoint, but connecting customers directly has
Oh,
always been the best selling tactic. Anytime I can take a happy customer and put it with a prospect so that they can shoot the shit in their own language with each other, meet each other where they are in similarity, and let them do the selling for us is going to be way more effective. I wish they'd
yeah.
let me share it publicly.
But since we brought this up, just quickly, I know that customer references have been a challenge since the dawn of B2G marketing. But do you have any tips and tricks that you have used that have helped build that credibility, Lauren, Emily?
I've got an example that I really love and am happy to share. We host a public sector lunch or breakfast at our user conference, right? So this is an opportunity for us to kind of isolate them, which automatically makes them feel special and gets them to kind of like open up. But one of the things that we do during that session is we ask different customers to be table hosts at the lunch. And it's not only a way for us to kind of recognize them, but it does really allow them to feel important and feel special and highlight the work that they're doing, right? So they get to come to our lunch, they get to participate as a table host, they get other customers and prospects excited about their work, and that just gets them in turn sharing more, candidly. And I mean, it's like truly the secret sauce. And I would also just say too, like sometimes that desire to want to like share it more broadly, right, shouldn't be overshadowed by the fact that it might be a small scale, but it is so valuable. And so, I'm always like, how can we record this and transcribe it and turn it into, 5 webinars? And it's like you have to really look at what value you're getting from that motion and be happy and proud of that.
Right. And they probably don't need public affairs permission to get them to be a table host. So genius.
Exactly.
I will say my favorite tactic was handing the mic over, giving it to our customers. If they couldn't get the success story through their public affairs team or their approval process internally, why don't you take the stage and you can share what you're comfortable? And maybe that's something where Axonius is co-branding it with you and we're up there on the stage with you, or maybe it's just a chance for you to have the spotlight yourself and share those lessons learned. And I think that brand partnership, having your brand in conjunction with some of these SMEs is incredibly valuable. But then they're telling the story from their perspective, and you can reuse that in a variety of different ways. Um, I also just think, our customers were some of my favorite folks. They're so brilliant, and they never get the chance to like nerd out about the things that they know so intimately. So just giving somebody the opportunity to do that was really fulfilling.
Amazing. So, Heather, I want to flip the switch a little bit, but Given everything that's happening in newsrooms with consolidation and layoffs and all the stories that we've been reading about restrictions on press accreditation, how should communications professionals rethink their engagement with the all the changes to the press corps when that's such a key part of building credibility and differentiation for many vendors?
So it's not pretty out there. There have been a lot of consolidations and cuts, and I don't want to undersell what a massive change it was at the Pentagon to have credentialed journalists leave because they wouldn't sign an agreement to report only the news that the Pentagon seemed fit to report. So with with every bad thing comes opportunity, right? Journalists are human too, and they want to be great at their jobs. And they are looking for new ways to report, whether you're the press corps or people who reported on government who have seen their sources just magically vanish because they left for whatever reason, right? So time is of the essence. Um, I'm going to, stamp here for relationships, right? You have to build those relationships. Reach out. Hey, you're okay. Hey, how's your beat changing? Is there anything I can do to support you? I know that's an investment of time, but you know what? That you want them to listen to you, right? I used to go around and a lot of people would be like, what is the magical subject line to get people to answer my email? It wasn't the subject line, it was the from field, right? If I knew you, now it could work against you. If you never sent me a pitch that was interesting, I might not open that email. But if you did, if you showed that you know what I write about, you showed what you know what I care about, you don't have to spend 2 hours creating an amazing pitch. You can go, hey, I have an interesting story. Here's a short thing. And guess what? I'm probably going to be the one reaching out to you going, tell me more, right? There's going to be some journalists who want to have a spoon fed story. No shade. Great. Hey, I know you're stressed. I've got like all the pieces. Here you go. The journalists who have always been investigative, they're not going to want that. But guess what? Pentagon reporters who aren't having press briefings still need to know what's going on in the community, right? They love tips. They love questions. Hey, we haven't seen anything about picking a name out of the hat, Golden Dome. What's going on with that? Help them keep a pulse when other people are making it hard for them, and you're going to have a friend.
I love that. Sam, I know we have a few minutes left. Have we gotten any other questions?
Yes, we do have a few others. One of our attendees has asked, how are you balancing the events versus content spread with feds having a hard time attending these events?
Yeah, they are. They're having trouble getting permission to travel. They're having trouble getting permission to pay to travel. We have not really adjusted our event schedule. We think it's still really important to show up and to be participating at these events if they are being held. One thing that we are leaning into a little bit more are some of the tier one, like corporate events. For example, Gartner, right? And what we're seeing is not necessarily the volume at those types of shows, but we are seeing um, the right people. And so we're seeing a higher level, right? We're seeing more of the executives show up. And those are places, those are kind of like those watering holes where government is still traveling to. And so we're trying to ensure that we've got the right counter people to meet with them, right? So whether that's through a private meeting or even just at our booth space, right? Like that's why we're continuing to be there. They are still showing up. I would also just say that, it's a mix, right? And we are absolutely invested in content and digital. People are still engaged in digital. I think it's a little bit slower, but they are registering, they are attending, or they're reading the recording. Um, those are the top of funnel tactics that we're looking at. We are also testing, more ungated content, just trying to be generous with our, messaging and resources. And, well, time will tell if that, helps us convert people like further down. But When I think about all of the ways that we can place the breadcrumbs, so to speak, out there, I think that, it continues to be a balance of in-person events and content and digital.
Yeah,
Emily, do you agree?
I totally agree. Yeah, I think it's more important now than ever to be where they are. Go to them, whether that's physically or virtually, right? So if you're going to expect an in-person meeting, don't expect them to travel, go to them. If
Mhm.
you expect them to show up online virtually to your event, make it worth their while, same way. And I also would just kind of double tap on what Lauren shared about those other kind of top of funnel tactics and campaigns that you can run. Um, the audience, the federal audience in particular, is changing, so your database might need a refresh. And those top of funnel tactics can really help with that as well.
Thank you. Sam, we probably have time for one more question if there is another one.
We do have one more question, just in regard to AI readiness and how you would approach that.
Hmm.
I know that's a tough question. Um, Anyone want to chime in on, I'm not sure if that is from the perspective of the vendor or the customer.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is like, you know, the opportunity to talk about AI readiness is my answer is like, sure, right? And that means like listening to them, right? Like where do they want to take that conversation and being a good listener and being flexible and hearing their concerns and understanding what they're looking to do. Um, Other than that, we're just trying to ensure that all of those other things still remain true, that like we're saying what we can do, we're demonstrating it, we're building that trust. And in this case, hoping that the conversations can really be a collaboration between vendor and government.
And I would say track your competitor. Are your competitors being successful with their AI first messaging? Are they doing things that they can kind of test out for you so that you don't have to run those yourself? You know what I mean? Um, and then use them to understand the appetite within your audience. Yeah. And then I think it's marketing 101, right? But the better you know your audience, the more you will have these answers to these questions and can ensure that your content lands.
And Heather, I'll give you the final word. Just thinking about messaging and any kind of hot takes you might have for our audience.
Oh, holy moly. Don't waste people's time. That's my hot take. Don't waste people's time. Everyone is stressed. It's been a stressful time, whether you're a journalist, whether you are a program manager in an agency, right? Be respectful of their time and be ready to answer their hard questions.
Fantastic. Well, ladies, I want to thank you so much. This has been such an interesting conversation, and I'm sure very valuable for all of our attendees. I also just want to give a plug for the next webinar we have planned, which is December 11th, and the topic is data that drives headlines, best practices for research-backed PR. So I hope that many in our audience will join us for that next session. I can't link into the holidays, but it is in December. So I hope you will join us. And thank you all so much. I thought this was fantastic. Appreciate all of you very much.
Thanks for the time, everyone.
All right.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.